Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. My name is Dr. Mahipal Singh Rathore, and in this video I will be discussing the Korean War with you. It is a very important part of the Cold War and hence we need to know about the Korean War. First of all, where is Korea? So this is a map of East Asia. You can see China here and this is Japan, and in between these two big countries is Korea. So today there are two countries, North Korea and South Korea. But for 1000 years, this was the Kingdom of Korea. It was one kingdom united. Okay, and despite being in between two such rich civilizations of China and Japan, it had its own language, its own cultural identity, and a very rich tradition and heritage. If we zoom into that map, so you can see this is the Korean Peninsula. It is called the Korean Peninsula. It comprises of two countries today, North and South Korea. The capital of North Korea is Pyongyang and South Korea is Seoul. Now you need to know a bit geography because lately UPSC has been asking questions on geography. For example, they ask questions about the Black Sea, the country situated between Black Sea and Mediterranean and so on. So we need to be very thorough with the geography of world. So this is the Sea of Japan. It is also called as East Sea sometimes. Okay, you will see in most of the maps it is written as East Sea in brackets. So the Sea of Japan is in between Japan and Korea. Okay, and the sea between China, this is China, and Korea is Yellow Sea. So a question can be asked like this, which is the sea between Korea and Japan and so on. Then towards south of Korea, we have this East China Sea here, down below. Okay. And this small channel between Japan and Korea is the Korea Strait. So we have four important seas to remember: the Sea of Japan, the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea here, and the Korean Strait. Now you can see the border of North Korea here. It is with China. So it is bordering with only one country, mainly China. There's a small border shared with Russia as well, but mostly it is with China. In the earlier part of the 20th century, Japan was a big imperial power. It was conquering all territories surrounding islands like Taiwan, Korea. It attacked China also 2 or 3 times. So in 1910, Japan occupied the Kingdom of Korea. Okay, they deposed the king of Korea and they occupied it. And for the next 35 years, they ruled as a very oppressive regime in Japan. They tried to eradicate the complete culture of Korea. They even tried to remove the language of Koreans from Korea itself. They made compulsory that you have to learn Japanese and not Korean language. So it was a very bad period of time for the Koreans. Also during World War II, there were a large number of comfort women. It is a very sensitive issue for Korea and Japan both. So comfort women were the Korean women who were used as sex slaves for the Japanese soldiers. Okay, so they were used for the Japanese soldiers, and this is the reason that Japan has apologized many a times to Korea and it still continues to do so. Japan has been doing this since the past 70 years. They have apologized to many countries: Malaysia, Singapore, Burma, Vietnam, Taiwan, and so on. Also China. Now when the World War II ended in 1945, at that time Korea was ruled by Japan, but Japan lost the World War II when Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed by the atom bombs. After that, the army of USSR entered Korea from north and the army of USA entered from south. So these two armies were marching in and they decided mutually that we will stop at 38 parallel, that you stop at 38 parallel and from the north and we will stop from south. That is what the US army told USSR and they agreed. So you can see that at that point of time only in 1945 itself, in August 1945, at that time only there is a division of the country. It's a de facto division. What they planned was in 5 years we will unite this area, and because we have agreements from beforehand that some areas will be occupied by USSR and some will be USA. That is why they occupied both these territories. They divided the territory into north and south. But their plan was after 5 years we will reunite them. So this is the map of Korea in 1945 when it was divided along the 38th parallel north. Okay, there is also a 38th parallel south, but it is commonly called as the 38th parallel. So this was the border decided by US Army. And the capital of north after that became Pyongyang and south was Seoul. So this North Korea, which was ruled by USSR from 1945 to 1948, okay, and this South Korea was administered by US up till 1948. So you can imagine that this automatically became communist under the communist influence of USSR, and this was becoming a more pro-Western country. But although not the people of Korea were supporting America, but the leaders, they tried to put up some leaders who were pro-America. Now you should know that this is also the time period when Cold War is starting. In 1949, in neighboring China, the communists had won the Chinese Civil War, a very important development for the Korean conflict, because you will come to know why China is so important to this war. And also in 1949, USSR tested its first nuclear weapon. So this changed the dynamics of the world. Now, not only USA had nuclear weapons, also USSR had nuclear weapons. Okay, this led to MAD. What is MAD? It is not MAD, it is mutually assured destruction. It means that if USA will attack USSR with nuclear weapons, so they can also now attack, and this means that both of them will be destroyed, and in fact the whole world can be destroyed. So this is called mutually assured destruction, and this is the biggest reason that Cold War never became a hot war. Do you understand? Cold War, USA and USSR never fought directly, and one of the main reasons for this was mutually assured destruction, because if they started fighting openly, then both of them could have been destroyed. Now we come to our Korea again. As I told you, 1945 to 48, both of them were ruled by the occupying armies of USSR and USA. So in 1948, South Korea had elections, and though these elections were not completely fair, there were allegations that they were rigged. So this this leader called Singh, he comes to power, and he is pro-USA. Okay, he is favoring USA. This is Singh, and in the north, there are no elections. USSR simply puts up a leader, and his name was Kim Il-sung. They put him up because he had stayed in USSR. He was a big time communist, and he was a Korean, but he had stayed in USSR, and he believed in the communist ideology. So they simply made him the leader of North Korea. He was very young at that time. He was hardly 40 years. He was somewhere around 35 to 40 years of age, while this guy was very old when he was made the president of South Korea. So both these leaders came to power at almost the same time in 1948, and both of them were against each other. Why? Because this person, Singh, was a big anti-communist. He hated communism, and on the other hand, Kim Il-sung believed he hated USA, and he wanted that the entire Korean peninsula should be united under one government once again. Both of them said that it should be reunited, but South Korean said that it should be under our government, and he said that it should be under my government. Now there's a question for you. Please write in comments, who are the current leaders of South and North Korea? I guess North Korean leader, you must have heard his name sometime, somewhere. He's very famous. But the South Korean leader, president, has been in the news lately since the past 2 months because of some problems in South Korea. Please write down their names if you know. So in 1948, from 1948 to 1950, both these Koreas were supported by their respective backers, that is USSR. So they supplied military to North Korea, and thus their military was very strong by 1950. On the other hand, South Korea was not supplied by very good weapons or even tanks. USA did not give tanks to them. They did not give rifles. They only gave them pistols and small weapons. So their military was very weak. And from 1948 to 50, small conflicts or small skirmishes were going on between these two. Okay, small border clashes, some little bit firing. These things were going on for 2 years. And by 1950, the very strong Korean army was completely ready to attack South. And they did that on 25th June 1950 when they invaded South Korea to unify the Korean peninsula. As I told you, Kim Il-sung wanted to unify the Korea under him, and as soon as it was invaded, United Nations passed a resolution to help South Korea. Okay, it is very important because this was the first time that UN was intervening militarily anywhere in the world. UN was found hardly 5 years back. Now you might wonder that why did USSR not use its veto? USSR was a permanent member of the Security Council and they could have vetoed this resolution, but they were boycotting the Security Council at that time. Why? Because they wanted People's Republic of China to use the permanent seat at Security Council. At that time, that seat was given to Republic of China or Taiwan. If you have any confusion between these two, you can watch my video on Taiwan. These doubts will be cleared. So ROC is Taiwan and they were given the veto power at that time. USSR was protesting this thing and hence they were absent from the Security Council. But as I told you, the North Army was very strong and they soon overran the entire peninsula up to Busan. I'll show you in a map, don't worry. See, this is Busan. Earlier it was called Busan also. It is a big city. It is an important city situated on the southern coast of South Korea. So the North Army came all the way from here. This was the border. This was the 38th parallel here. They came all the way from here till here. Okay, only this small area was remaining, which was protected by the soldiers of USA and South Korea. Apart from this, the entire Korean peninsula came under the control of North Korean army. So this was in the initial stages of the war. But what happens is the US General Douglas MacArthur, his name was Douglas MacArthur. So he was the general who was ruling over Japan. At that time, Japan was also under the control of US only. So this US general called Douglas MacArthur, he made a brilliant plan. He said that we cannot fight them back. It will take us very long time. So he took ships from here and they landed here in Incheon near the capital Seoul, and they did an amphibious landing and they won this area. Okay, and what happens when they win this area? They cut off the entire army in the south regions. So this led to the defeat of the North Korean army, and from here again this US army, the UN army, okay, now the United Nations had sent a force and the leading army under this was US only. Actually more than 90% of the army was comprised of US soldiers, but officially it was called the UN force, United Nations force. So this United Nations force, after cutting off the northern army here, they moved north. They crossed this 38th parallel. Okay, now you can see that it is wrong on part of them. They were supposed to stay south of the border, but no, they crossed because Douglas MacArthur was wanted that we will defeat them completely, and they went up and they went up till here. So by the time in few months only in 2 months, they had pushed the northern army to this region. So they had been here. So as I told you, an outflank maneuver by the US forces, amphibious landings at Incheon and retaking of Seoul, the capital. UN forces reach up to the Yalu River, and after this point, China entered the war. Now, this is the Yalu River, okay. Yalu River is the border between China and North Korea. So, UN forces reached up till here. But at this time, suddenly China came into the conflict. Now, China had just come out of its own revolution and no one expected that China could bring such a big army to this fight. But China had large number of army and they silently moved their armies from the mainland China to their border, and from there in October the Chinese army started pushing the UN forces, and after only 2 months or so they had captured Seoul. By January they had captured Seoul and they again moved and pushed back till here, till these regions. Okay, so you can see that this region was again under the control of North Korea, but now the main fighting force is not North Korean army, it is mainly China who is fighting, and they received some amount of support from USSR. USSR did not send its army, but they sent their air force. They gave support in the form of guns and tanks and also airplanes, mainly aeroplanes. But again the UN forces pushed back, and by April they had recaptured Seoul. Seoul was captured and recaptured 4 times. 4 times it changed hands between the two armies. Then after so much of army going back and forth, this Douglas MacArthur, who was the US general, he was called back by the US President Truman because he said that you are waging a war and your methods are not correct. And he was called back. He was a very popular general actually, and calling him back was a very big decision. But this general had become very... he did not listen to the president, and that's why he was called back. Now after this when the UN forces captured Seoul, they again pushed this North Army to the border. This is the 38th parallel. So now again the North Army, the Chinese army was somewhere here. Now this fighting went on for 2 years in this area only. There was kind of a stalemate. Neither the Chinese had the resources to push back down south. Neither the South Army or the US Army had the courage to go up again. They did not want to go up actually, because they had lost a lot of soldiers in that campaign towards the north. So this stalemate continued for 2 years around the 38th parallel. So basically most of the fighting was done by 1950 April and May. So you can say that from June 1950 till April or May of 1951, most of the fighting was done in this 1 year. After that, for 2 years, it was almost a stalemate around the 38th parallel. Finally, an armistice was signed on 27 July 1953. The fighting stops, and in this armistice, India played a very big role. Okay, India under Jawaharlal Nehru was the leading negotiator in these talks, and we were part of the UN delegation that was sent for this armistice agreement. And General Thimayya from India, he also played a big role in the repatriation of prisoners of war. He was under his leadership, that agreement for the repatriation of prisoners of war was signed. So you should just remember, India played a big role in the negotiation. According to this armistice, they stopped fighting wherever they were. They moved 2 kilometers back. It means that North Army went 2 kilometers back and South Army went 2 kilometers back. In this manner, a 4-kilometer exclusion zone was created, and that was the de facto border. Now remember, this was not a peace treaty. A peace treaty is a final settlement, but this was an armistice. Armistice just means that fighting is stopped until a final agreement is reached. But there was no final agreement reached ever, and up till now, even after almost 65 years, this war is officially still going on. So the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, this is North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, that is South Korea, they are officially still at war. So it is also said that this is the longest running conflict of the modern age. You can see here, this was the map of 1948 when the 38th parallel was the line. After the war, this became the line. So right now, 38th parallel is not the border between South and North Korea. It is a popular misconception that 38th parallel is still the border. No, it is not the 38th parallel. You can clearly see the line is more of a zigzag now. Wherever the fighting was going on, they just stopped there and that became the border. And this is, you can see here, it is zoomed in. This is the demilitarized zone, and in between there is the boundary. But this demilitarized zone actually is very much militarized. There are lots and lots of landmines planted. There are a lot of barbed wire is there inside it. But army officially, they do not put their army here. They only go for patrols. The army is along this area. Okay, so North Korea here and South Korea just outside this demilitarized zone, they have the heaviest deployment of troops. In fact, this is the most militarized zone in the entire world. As I told you, the 4-kilometer exclusion zone, and there is a militarized zone around the DMZ, that is the demilitarized zone. You can see how much wire is there. They have put up so much wire, and this 4-kilometer area, no one lives here. There is nothing, only wild animals roam here. So this has become such a good place for wild animals that many species which were almost extinct or which were very vulnerable, their number has increased. So there are some very rare animals are seen sometimes in camera captures near the border. This is one of some rare goat species of Korea. It can be seen in a capture from a CCTV here near the border. Now this war had a lot of war crimes from both the sides, and because of war crimes, whenever there are war crimes, a lot of civilian deaths will happen, as it was there in Vietnam War and also in World War II. Here also there were so many civilian deaths. See, 2.5 million, almost 25 lakh. Some people say even 30 lakh civilians died in this war. And even though this number is not such a big one, but I will tell you how much the population in 1945, after the end of World War II, South Korea had a population of 16 million and North Korea had a population of 9 million. So around 25 million. So imagine every 1 in 10 persons in Korea died during this war. So it is a huge number. If you consider it percentage wise, 10% of the population died in this war. and there are the military deaths around 1 million. It is said that no one has declared, no one knows. It is very difficult to count bodies when there are so many people dying, and especially with so many soldiers of China invading. Around 4 lakh soldiers of China died in this war, and North and South Korea do not have any confirmed records, but US has a confirmed record of 35,000 US soldiers dying in this war. Now, a very important fact about this war is that even though it was such a disastrous war, there was hardly any geographical change. You have seen that there is only little change in the border from the 38th parallel to the current DMZ. There was also no much political change. North Korea was a communist country. It is still a communist country. South Korea was not a democracy, but still it was favorable to US and Western powers. It is still favorable to US and Western powers. Also, no much administrative change. So you can say that this war was actually fought for nothing. Now we will see the importance or the impact of the Korean War. See, firstly, it is important because United Nations intervened militarily for the first time. This was a big departure from the earlier policy of League of Nations. League of Nations did not intervene militarily anywhere. Secondly, this was the only time when USA and USSR fought openly. Now, earlier I said that they did not fight openly, but see, their jet fighters were fighting. US and USSR planes fought each other in the air during this conflict, and so it was the only instance where this happened. There was a big threat of nuclear weapons being used. In fact, General MacArthur, the one who was called back by the president, he was telling the president that let's use nuclear weapons on Chinese army because our so many soldiers are getting killed. Let's just throw nuclear bombs on North Korea and Chinese army. So this is also one of the reasons that he was called back. Then the domino theory took shape in USA. Domino theory means that, see, these are dominoes. So if this falls, then this will also fall. This will also fall. So the US policymakers said that if one country becomes communist, then around that other countries will also become communists. So they said that now that China is a communist country after its civil war in 1949, so North Korea also is a communist country, and they will try to make Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, all of these countries they will try to bring them into communism. So this domino theory was one of the biggest reasons that they intervened in Vietnam later. USA sent its army to Vietnam, another disastrous war. Helicopters were used for the first time. Jet planes were used. See, earlier the planes used in World War II were not jet planes. Okay, they were earlier generation planes, but now jet planes, the MiG-15. At that time, it was one of the most advanced plane that in the world, and this MiG-15 was used by USSR, and it was a new plane, and USA aeroplanes were very much behind this MiG-15. Then there was effective medical care of soldiers, and USA took care of its soldier, and many soldiers who were wounded, they regained back because of the medical facilities provided. It is also called as the forgotten war sometimes in the USA because it is not depicted in popular culture so much. You might have hardly seen any movie which showed Korean War, or you might have not have seen any reference to it in any popular novels or any popular songs or anywhere. On the other hand, you see Vietnam War, you can list so many movies about Vietnam War, World War II, World War I. So this is called forgotten war because it is said that it came in between two big wars, right? World War II and Vietnam War, and in between nothing much was achieved. People don't understand why the Korean War was fought, especially in the USA at that time, and this is the reason that it is not very much in the popular culture. Now, what happened to Koreas, both the Koreas? Republic of Korea, that is the South Korea, it was very much as equal to North Korea only for the next 20-30 years. It was a very poor and backward country, but in 1970s there was a big economic boom, and suddenly big companies like Hyundai, Samsung, all these countries are South Korean companies. So they started production, and suddenly South Korea became a developed country within the next 30 years. It is one of the largest economies in Asia now. Also, there was no democracy in South Korea until 1987. So it was also a totalitarian state, and there was military dictators and so on. But in 1987, there was a revolution, and since then it has been a vibrant democracy. On the other hand, the DPRK, that is North Korea, it has till date been a totalitarian state. that Kim Il Sung, the leader who was made the leader in 1948 by the USSR, he ruled till 1994. So for 46 years that one man ruled. Then his son ruled for the next 20 years, and from 2011 this Kim Jong-un is ruling over the country. So I have given you the answer of the question that I asked earlier. For North Korea, at least, Kim Jong-un. This is Kim Jong-un. And North Korea is a very unique kind of state. They don't allow anyone to enter the country. The people living in North Korea are not allowed to go anywhere outside. You cannot call, there is no internet access, there is no telephones, nothing. It is a very backward country. There have been a lot of famines because North Korea refuses to take help from outside. There is hardly any trade with any other countries. So there have been millions of people dying in famine. They are self-reliant, and they call this the Juche policy. I don't know how it's pronounced exactly. So this is the policy which was given by Kim Il Sung, and because of this policy, millions of people have died of starvation in North Korea. See, this is the photograph that was taken by a NASA satellite of the Korean Peninsula during night time. Look at here. This is North Korea. Hardly any lights. What do lights mean? Development. Look at here. This is the capital Seoul. This is Busan. And the entire South Korea is a very developed country now. And on the other hand, hardly any lights here. Only the capital Pyongyang is illuminated. And here you can see cities of China. So this is how backward North Korea is today. But still they say that they have developed nuclear weapons. And the world is today threatened by the nuclear weapons or the hydrogen bomb that North Korea says it has tested. Although no one has been able to verify what exactly the weapons are, what are the capabilities, but they say they have nuclear weapons and it is taken very seriously as a threat. So I hope you understood the topic, and you can give us suggestions for what topics do you want us to make videos on. And before leaving, if you identify this person, you have been watching the news very carefully and it's good. And if you do not, then search for this Agent VX in news and you will know who this person is. Thank you very much. Have a good day.